This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
And good morning, good afternoon. Welcome. You're here live with Dr. Jeff Werber, your host here for the next 30 minutes here on Pet Life Radio's Ask the Vets with Dr. Jeff. As I like to say, we're here for you. We're here for your pets. We're here to answer any questions you may have, anything you want to talk about. And easy to reach us. Number one, the good old-fashioned telephone, 877-385-8882. Once again, 877-385-8882. Or better yet, join us here live on Zoom. We got a Zoom channel for you. You can get you right here with your pet. You can join us, have your camera, have your phone with you, your laptop, whatever, however you want to join on Zoom. And it's the best way to do it. And just go on to PetLifeRadio.com, click on shows, go to Ask the Vets with Dr. Jeff, and you'll see a Zoom link waiting for you there. Click on it, join us. We'd love to have you be part of our show. And of course, we want your pet with you. So if it's a lap pet, have him or her in your lap. If it's a big pet, have them sit next to her. If it's a really big pet, you can be sitting on the back of your pet. And, like one of those, you have a Mastiff, you have a Great Dane. Come on, we're sure they can handle you. So anyway, as many of you know, I will start while I get you geared up, to make that phone call, to join us here live on Zoom. I'll break the ice with a little perusing the news from the American Veterinary Medical Association and the American Animal Hospital Association to help you basically know what's going on in our field, in the veterinary world. So again, what would our show be like nowadays in the last year without a COVID update? So we have two. In the United Kingdom, in England, there were two recent human to cat transmissions. Sadly, and I don't want you to get the wrong idea here that it's becoming more virulent. It's really not. Cats can be exposed. They can get it. It's usually mild, but one was a little kitten, and the little kitten developed a pneumonia, which an older cat would have handled. Sadly, this poor kitty was not doing well, and they elected to put him to sleep. The other one was a 6-year-old, and he just is more typical, a very mild upper respiratory, lasted a couple of days, and he's fine. But the more important thing here is to let us know, to sort of strengthen the point that animals can get it from us. So if you or someone around the house, is COVID positive, you want to be really careful. And which brings me to the other story, very similar. There were in Washington State, this was a study done by the University of Washington, is that there were 23 dogs that tested positive for the virus. Interestingly, they usually don't have signs. So they really become carriers. But where we once thought they were like inert, like it was not a problem carrier, it was almost like a fomite, like the virus hanging on to a handle at a local grocery store. And that's why we were beginning, they were wiping them down. We were wearing gloves. We were really even more neurotic at the beginning of this whole thing. Now we're finding that dogs can actually get it in their bloodstream. They don't really have clinical disease, but they can potentially then transmit it back to another person. So bottom line is this, that when someone in the house has been or is exposed or is positive to COVID, you want to make sure to really separate yourself from the animals, because you can give it to them. That's not the bad thing. The question is, and we don't really yet know, what is the likelihood that an animal then can give it to another person? So therefore, take the safe route, and that is to just minimize, avoid contact, wash your hands before, don't cough on your dog, wear your mask, whatever it is to keep your pets protected. So I thought this story was pretty cool. And that is that at Tufts University, that's a veterinary school in Boston, students and one of the professors and students had a project they were working on, and that was to develop a brace to prevent overextension of the fetlock joint in a horse, which possibly had some sort of soft tissue injury. And horses are so heavy that it is very difficult for them with a weakened joint not to exert more pressure on that joint. So they created a brace that prevents the overextension. So it allows the horses to heal, first of all, more gradually, putting less pressure on that joint that is trying to heal from the soft tissue injury. And so it allows them to gradually return to exercise, because it's so important that they keep moving, but we don't want to stress that any joint that's injured. So, this is why, and I'm sure you've heard, they shoot horses, don't they? Many times when we have, equine injuries, limb injuries, it's very difficult to get them back to, even exercising the point to become just not, to forget the racing, just to get back in a farm or a ranch, or, just to have people take care of their horses and ride them and just become sort of more of a pet. So anyway, this is really cool. And just to think that it was co-produced by some students that were like co-inventors with the professor. That's pretty cool. And this next story I kind of liked as well. So many of you might remember the whole Chernobyl, the plant in Russia that kind of imploded, exploded, and for hundreds and hundreds of miles, radioactive material. And it was a disaster. I think it was like 68 or something. Anyway, there were a lot of people that obviously were affected. Most people left their homes. They have like 1,000 square mile radius where there's nobody can be. I mean, that's a lot of miles because of this. That's how powerful the radioactivity was. Anyway, so there were a lot of abandoned dogs, and those dogs ended up obviously staying around, surviving clearly. And now, years later, they're the offspring of the offspring and the offspring are hanging around this plant. Well, apparently, because of the 1,000-mile radius that they're not allowing anybody there are guards protecting that radius. And a lot of these guards have taken to these animals, these dogs, and they're caring for them. They're feeding them, even though they were told not to. But how do you resist a poor dog? So anyway, so there's a lot of bonding going on with these guards and these dogs around this 1,000-mile radius. So anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. I don't have one, and I'm first to admit I would not be a veterinarian that you'd want to go to if you do have one. But they're in some areas, and even in California, they're fairly popular pets, and those are tortoises. And like my sister had 2 of them. I mean, one, I don't know. First of all, they grow to many, many years, like even older than parrots. It's amazing how long they can live. So there was a story that if you have a tortoise, how do you know if it's sick? They really don't complain. They don't really make sounds. So it's really just knowing your tortoise. So here are some things that were pointers to help determine whether or not if you have a sick tortoise. All right. So certainly behavior changes would be one. So if they're just not the way they used to be, whatever it is. Trouble breathing, that's a biggie. If you could see discharge out of their nose and their mouth and their open mouth breathing, where you could tell. And if you know your tortoise, you'll be able to tell the breathing is becoming labored. Swollen or closed eyelids is another thing to watch out for. Obviously, poor appetite. And if any of these, your tortoise should be checked out. And obviously, what you need to do is you need to find a veterinarian. And in fact, if you have any exotic animal, and what I mean by exotic nowadays is anything really but a dog or a cat or a horse. Bunnies would be pretty norm, but like rats, hamsters, guinea pigs, any kind of reptile, snakes, lizards, geckos, any of these things, you want to find a vet that really knows how to deal with these animals. And so anyway, because mainstream, birds also. I mean, there's a specialty in birds, and birds are, there are birds now that are actually more expensive than most dogs. So it's very important to find a veterinarian who specializes, or at least is very, very comfortable with these animals. Anyway, mites, shell trauma, interestingly, respiratory viruses, and herpes virus all can cause these behavioral changes we just talked about. So there are many, many things that one should be aware of if you're going to have a tortoise to make sure that they are, and even just basic husband for any of these animals, you really need to learn what habitat to keep them in, how and what they should be fed. I got a call on AirVet last week about a bird, a cockatiel, and it was on an all-seed diet, which is, it's doable, but not ideal. And then they switched because they read something about, and they started going to an all fruit and veggie diet, which also is doable, but not ideal. And you really want to have some sort of combination, or getting pellets that have seed in them and just straight bird seed. There's some vitamin issues, vitamin deficiency and vitamin excess issues with just bird seed diets. Anyway, these are things that knowing in advance, if you're going to get a bird, to either just have a consult actually with one of these doctors, or get online, do a lot of reading. There's so much information out there. Bunnies have their own thing. If you're going to keep reptiles, the type of terrarium enclosure, the heat lamp, the hot rock. I mean, there's so many things to know. And, unless your veterinarian is very familiar with these, you're like your dog and cat vet, then you might be at a disadvantage without finding a veterinarian that is more comfortable working with these creatures and more knowledgeable. So keep that in mind. Oh, this is also speaking of illnesses, and to go again with horses. And now horses, for a horse vet, I mean, this is really common stuff. But horses, because of their size, need recovery time. They say usually about a day of recovery for each day of fever or clinical signs of illness. So, for example, if your horse was sick for 2 or 3 days, you need at least, after they're better, 2 or 3 days of recovery time. But also understand with viruses, they harbor their viruses for a while. So even though they're now clinically normal, they can shed viruses for up to 20 days. So what is recommended now is that if you have a horse that had a virus, recovered, is doing fine, you still want to isolate this horse from other horses for at least 28 days. Now, there are some tests that your veterinarian, your equine vet, could run after around 14 days to tell if your horse is still shedding. And if not, then you'll probably be okay to start having your horse rejoin other horses. But if you're, when in doubt, at least 28 days after your horse is fully recovered. So that's something to also keep in mind. And there were a couple of other stories that I found interesting. And this was also interesting, but really cool. And what's so interesting is that, great minds think alike. When things happen, oftentimes they happen in groups. This is 2 completely independent schools, independent studies and independent programs that happened around the same time. One was in Florida, and it was a state program that was developed by University of Florida Vet School, and basically providing pet food, low-cost veterinary care, vouchers for apartment pet deposits. Like if you're finding a place, most landlords are going to require a deposit if you're going to have pets. Well, we want you to have pets. So because of what they call anyone who needs assistance because of financial difficulties or housing insecurity, I like that term, housing insecurity, they are here to help. Well, while this is going on, interestingly, in Wisconsin, there's a rising number of owners that have lost their homes, pet owners losing their homes. So the University of Wisconsin's Veterinary School, School of Pharmacy, and School of Social Welfare, or social work, have collaborated to create a program to do the same thing, provide assistance to pet owners who are experiencing homelessness or financial difficulties. And it's crazy how these 2 things happen almost exactly the same time. And finally, we talked about this in the House of Representatives, now it's in the Senate. It's going to be a bill to ban the possession of big cats, lions, tigers, cheetah, leopards, mountain lions, any of those for private ownership unless you have a particular license. And then also to help ban or stop using cubs as part of these petting zoos and programs for kids because of many difficulties, diseases going both ways. So it did pass in the House and most probably will pass in the Senate as well. And then in Ohio, lastly, before we break, in fact, you know what? We'll talk about this on the coming back from the break. So we're at that time. Don't go away. We have some more things to talk about. Plus, we're going to talk about, I like to share questions I get on my AMAs, on my social media. So when I get a bunch of questions coming in the same time, around the same time, or even in the same week, I know it's important. So we're going to talk about that as well. And it's about neutering your dogs. Don't go away.
Pets are part of the family. Make sure you can always afford the quality health care they need with Easy Pet Check, a nationwide pet insurance alternative. With Easy Pet Check, you'll save up to 75% on all your pet's health care at any licensed veterinarian in the U.S. Easy Pet Check accepts all dogs and cats regardless of pre-existing conditions. Visit EasyPetCheck.com. That's the letters EasyPetCheck.com. Taking care of your pet can be easy with Easy Pet Check.
Take a bite out of your competition. Advertise your business with an ad in Pet Life Radio podcasts and radio shows. There's no other pet-related media that is as large and reaches more pet parents and pet lovers than Pet Life Radio. With over 7 million monthly listeners, Pet Life Radio podcasts are available on all major podcast platforms. And our live radio stream goes out to over 250 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Stitcher, and other streaming apps. For more information on how you can advertise on the #1 pet podcast and radio network, visit PetLifeRadio.com/advertise today.
Let's talk pets.
Let's talk pets
On Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
And welcome back to Here Live with Dr. Jeff, where we're here on Pet Life Radio's Ask the Vets with Dr. Jeff. Before the break, I gave you a quick tease, well, two teases. One is about something going on in Ohio. When I say, these are often regional. So it was reported basically in an Ohio publication, one of the Ohio newspapers, but that doesn't mean it's just Ohio. And that is, we're seeing a lot more ticks. And this is springtime where ticks are going nuts. And they have, listen to this. When you think Lyme disease, or when we have thought about Lyme disease in the past, we're thinking Northeast, we're thinking Connecticut, Lyme, where it started. All of a sudden, I don't see it really much here in California, but I will tell you that in Ohio, now we're spreading westward, there were more tick-borne diseases reported. Listen to this, Lyme, there were 3,800 cases of Lyme disease in Ohio this year alone in the first quarter. That's insane. So we have to learn from this. And insects, look, let's take heartworm, another one. We really, in the West, never had a big heartworm problem, if at all. Now we're starting to see it. And it was predicted about 10 years ago that we in California are going to start seeing a year-round heartworm disease threats from a particular mosquito that has adapted to the Southern California climate, Culex quincofasciatus, or it might be Culicoides quincofasciatus. But anyway, it is a nasty mosquito, lives year-round, and we are seeing, therefore, more and more cases. Well, ticks, any of these diseases adapt. So it's the disease itself, the Borrelia, which is the organism behind the Lyme disease, and the ticks themselves that are carrying Borrelia. It's not just the deer tick anymore. It are many of the different ticks. So the threats are growing. We need to make sure our pets are protected, which in essence will protect us as well. I've known a few people that had Lyme disease, and if not treated early, if not caught, it is not pretty. And the result of both the cases that I know of were very sad, say no more. So anyway, get your pets on flea and tick control. There are some great products out there. The new class are called isazolines, things like Credelio, NexGard, Bravecto, Simparica. And you're going to read things because online they sensationalize things about these seizures. Well, first of all, it is believed that those dogs who were getting seizures were already predisposed to seizures because of epilepsy or some other condition. And it can exacerbate the seizure if there are some dogs. And being on one of them doesn't automatically include all the others. So it's not really it's the individual drug, not the class, the isoxazoline class. My dogs have been on Bravecto for years now, and I've never had a problem. I got 5 dogs. So I'm not worried. And speak to your veterinarian. Some of the existing products out there, the ones with imidacloprid, the ones with fipronil, the product themselves are still very safe. They're not nearly as effective. We're seeing what we call resistance amongst the fleas and ticks to the active ingredients of either imidacloprid or fipronil. So even though safety-wise, it's not an issue, but you're not going to get the same control. So I would speak to your veterinarian and get some of these, the newer class of medications that seem to be much, much more effective. But anyway, take advantage of it. In the last week or two, I've gotten 2 questions about neutering dogs and behavior. And it's so interesting because they both came in around the same time and very similar stories. One was about litter mates. And I can relate because when we got, I think it was my second or third Labrador, he was, first of all, magnificent. He was a yellow lab. It was our third lab, but it was I think it was our first yellow. And we got him locally. I was the one that set up the breeding with a veterinarian who had the male. And then one of my clients at the hospital I was working at had the female. She wanted to breed. She had a yellow female. I knew my good friend where I was working at his equine facility when I was a pre-vet. He had this magnificent yellow named Monty. So we did the arrangement and she had puppies. And since they were all local, we had some play dates going for several months. We would get them together. Oh my God, there were 9 in the litter. I think we got together with 4 or 5 of them. Anyway, so at first they were just playful. They were running. They were having the time of their lives. And as they got older, hit 6 or 7 months, 8 months, we would get together and they wanted to kill each other. So what happened is now you have, oh, by the way, important to note, all of the 9 yellow puppies, all males. There was not a single female in the litter. So we're getting all these male dogs that are reaching that point of sexual maturity. And guess what? They weren't so friendly anymore. They wanted to kill each other. So kind of put that in the back of your mind, because then the second question came up. I just answered it actually this week. that a lady writes that she had 2 puppies, one 7 months, one 9 months, and they loved each other. They were got near each other, obviously in age. They're very close in age, and now they are just wanted to attack each other. And she wanted to know if neutering would help. So, early on, when pre-sexual maturity, when you see dogs growling, mounting each other, it's all about dominance. There's no sexuality involved in this. They are, basically trying to establish who's the boss, who gets access to mom and dad first, who gets the toy, whatever. And that's how they test each other. They'll play growling. They're going to mount each other. I'm the boss. I'm the winner, etc. But as they get older and as they reach sexual maturity, now we're dealing with something totally different. This is a dominance, more of a sexual dominance, where they want complete access. Forget the toy. They want access to the female. So the same dogs that were wonderful playing with each other, having a blast with each other, may actually become rivals. And I mean sexual rivals. So now these dogs want to kill it. They don't want to be so friendly anymore. They don't like the other one. And therefore, one of the things, of course, I recommend, and we've talked about, neutering, which I'm obviously a big fan of, and, the time of neutering. And unfortunately, we have this battle because early sexual maturity can hit at, 7, 8, 9, 10 months, 12 months of age for sure. But we don't want to neuter these dogs until they have reached that full sexual maturity. And I even say for a male, especially large breed males that are prone to bone cancer, the study I'm referring to is the study of Rottweilers, where there was a 65% greater incidence in long bone cancer as adult dogs in those dogs that were pre-pubertally neutered. So neutering early, which we often recommended years ago and still can for small breeds. For small breeds, one of my criteria is once all the adult teeth are in, because these dogs are more prone to having what we call retained deciduous teeth. I don't want to neuter before all the adult teeth are in, because then we may have to anesthetize again a month later to pull baby teeth that didn't fall out on their own. That's kind of stupid, since anesthesia is the most dangerous part of any of the procedures that we do, almost any. Therefore, I wait for small breeds. I wait for all the adult teeth to come in. But the big breeds, I want to wait until they're fully sexually mature. So I'm pushing off neuter to at least a year of age, maybe, as I said, large breeds, a year and a half. But if you have 2 large breeds, 2 intact males, and you're waiting for both, you could have a little bit of a disaster. So those you have to, if there's one smaller than the other, whatever criteria you're going to use, or get them both when they're 9 or 10 months, that's still probably good enough. They are sexually mature at that point, and do the neutering at that point to eliminate, or it's not going to completely eliminate. They're going to have the time to reestablish their hierarchy within the home, even after being neutered. And also, by the way, don't think I'm going to neuter my dog on Tuesday and we're going to be fine on Wednesday. And it's not just the healing process. I'm talking about the healing process might take a week or 2. I'm talking about the effect of testosterone in the body and the behavioral effect that testosterone is causing for the dog. That may not dissipate for 2 months, 6 to 8 weeks, I tell people. So just keep that in mind, that even after the surgery, you still have to be very careful. And including, let's say, even if it's only one dog and it's springtime and the females are coming into season, into estrus, and you have a dog that you're wanting to avoid that, he's old enough, it's ready to be neutered, you neuter him, fantastic. Now I'm home free. No, you're not home free. Not necessarily at all. Not for 6 to 8 weeks or sometimes longer. So some of these responses become learned. So you need to be very, very careful with your dogs. They still are going to want to roam. That fear, that anxiety of them being hit by a car, attacked by another dog, depending on where you live, a coyote. Just be very careful with these dogs, even after surgery. For the same token, when we have a female that is spayed and you want to go ahead and obviously you're spaying for the right reasons, if she is near estrus or the hormones have already started, the pre-estrus hormones, which lead into estrus, then she is going to be very attractive to a male. And even though she probably won't stand for the male is going to try. So you need to be very careful with these females as well, because now their uterus is a short, blind ending uterus, the body of the uterus, and that can be dangerous. So you just got to be very, very careful with these dogs. Anyway, that's all we have time for today. And thanks for joining me here on Pet Life Radio's Ask the Vet with Dr. Jeff. We would like to hear more from you. So anytime you want to drop me a note, at drjeff@petliferadio.com, or you can reach me at just jeff@airvet.com. Or if you haven't logged on, log on to AirVet, and you could talk to me or one of our many, many doctors if you have any questions or problems. But better yet, save your questions. If they're just questions, we'd love to have you here live on Pet Life Radio here on Ask the Vets with Dr. Jeff every Sunday, noon in the East, 9 a.m. in the West, and whatever time it is in between. You can reach us here live. We'd love to have you as guests. So we will see you here next back time, next back channel here on Pet Life Radio's Ask the Vets with Dr. Jeff. Have a great week, everybody. And again, if you have questions, send them to me so we can answer them live on air. And better yet, as I said, join us here as guests next week or any week thereafter. We'll see you next week.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.